The best of money matters. Wealth Tracker.
Welcome to the Wealth Tracker, where we dive into the uncharted territories of niche investment strategies that promise to redefine wealth. Hello, I'm Hongbin Jeong. This year, thematic investing is no longer just a niche approach. It's becoming a core strategy for investors seeking to align their portfolios with powerful long-term structural shifts. From AI and automation to clean energy and reshoring, these themes aren't just buzzwords. They're reshaping sector dynamics and driving capital flows. But as thematic products multiply and narratives evolve, investors face tough questions. Which themes are here to stay? How do you avoid chasing hype? And how can you translate a big picture idea into specific high conviction sector or stock bets? Well, to find out more, joining me now is Yan Taw Boon, who is the head of Thematics at Neuberger Berman. Yan Taw, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, investors in 2025 are, increasingly prioritizing themes with tangible sector implications. For example, AI might lead to overweighting in semiconductors or cloud infrastructure, while clean energy could shift capital to utilities or battery metals. So, Yan Taw, what's your current highest conviction theme, and how is that translating into specific sectoral or stock picks?
Yeah, so in terms of conviction, we believe that currently AI, or artificial intelligence, which is going through a major transformation, then at the same time, we're seeing strong earnings momentum. If you look at the U.S. tech giants, that's very evident that, AI-related CapEx is rising. So this is one of our, highest conviction theme, if you may call it that way. And this obviously translates into, as you've rightfully pointed out, semiconductors, networking, power management, but it's also broadening out to many other sectors, including if you look at the application side of things, one key area that we're looking at the moment, for example, is smart glasses, because that's, for example, one of the potential use cases that, AI could completely transform our daily lives. And AI, will enable, for example, smart glasses to potentially, replace smartphones in the future. So things like that, obviously, as we look into the different, stocks, I can't go into specific stocks, but, areas or key enablers within these areas, I think, are going to be very, very important.
Okay. So, some themes here like reshoring or decarbonization have decade-long relevance, while others like metaverse, they've kind of faded despite early hype. So how do you distinguish between a structural theme and a, short-term trend when making sectoral allocations?
Yeah. So I think, as I sometimes advise my mom, for example, as a kind of, mom and pop investor looking at, these growth themes, it's very important to understand, the key fundamentals. When it comes to stock picks, you really need to know the fundamentals, not only on a sectoral level, not only on, the theme itself, but the key drivers for individual stocks. Or when you look at, ETFs and so on, they're made out of individual stocks, and they're sometimes quite concentrated. So it's very, very important to be able to discern between the hype and also, the real fundamentals. As Bill Gates has pointed out, we tend to kind of overestimate a theme in terms of the near-term drivers, but we also at the same time tend to underestimate the longer-term growth drivers and the longer-term compounding return over the longer term. So with that aspect, I think, having the right, stock analysis, having, really strong understanding of what's going on is really going to be very important.
Are there any under-the-radar sectors or subsectors benefiting from thematic tailwinds that markets are currently overlooking then?
Yeah, I think they're plentiful. If you look across the market, as I mentioned, for example, within AI infrastructure, there are a lot of new growth drivers. These are broadening out. For example, as I mentioned, like power management. If you think about AI infrastructure, they're going to consume a lot of power, all the way from the grid infrastructure towards even power chips within AI data centers. And if we look across various areas such as networking, if you think about, all these AI or GPU chips, each of them only have a confined amount of computing power, but when you can network them together, the network effect is going to be very important. So networking components, key areas like that's going to be very, very important.
Okay. So how are you evaluating valuation risks in sectors tied to, popular themes, especially those that have already seen strong inflows?
Yeah, so I think valuation discipline is going to be very important. First of all, I think it's very important to understand the historical valuation range and compare that with existing market, valuation. Look at, say, the tech sector. We believe that, compared to, say, the really hyped seasons, we're not really at a very demanding valuation at the moment, given earnings momentum are really, really solid. Now, if you look across, the valuation spectrum for different sectors, initially you would see that, given kind of like, investors momentum into a particularly new sector, valuations can rise up very, very quickly. But it's also very important to stay disciplined, right, and really go with the understanding of fundamentals and not join just the hype. So I think this is something very important to take into account.
Okay. Have any of your thematic convictions changed significantly in the past 12 months? I mean, if so, what's triggered that shift?
There are a couple of areas. I think on one, artificial intelligence, we've continued to increase our conviction as spending on AI infrastructure continues to accelerate. So that's something that's changed on a positive perspective. Another area that we're seeing, very strong momentum, that is defense or defense-related spending. If you look at Europe, that's accelerating as well. Where we're seeing a bit less momentum, that would be, for example, clean energy, given the change in policies, especially in nations like the U.S., that's going to be a bit of a slowdown in the near medium term as well. So, these themes or these changes would happen from time to time, given political or policy changes, something to keep in mind.
All right. Well, thematic funds have been criticized for superficial inclusion. How do you assess a company's alignment with a theme beyond just its revenue exposure?
Yeah, this is where fundamental analysis comes into play. Having real kind of analysis, very detailed analysis beyond just the company's headlines, that's going to be very important. As a fundamental investors, we would look into, for example, the company's revenue exposure tied to a specific theme. More importantly, the earnings growth and its outlook. Now, if you think about a theme, a company might be exposed to that particular very exciting theme, but you also have to understand what's happening in the near term because share price will react to the near term drivers. So it's very important to take a look at that, and obviously valuations plays into a very important part of it as well. If valuations are already off the charts, that's something that's a red flag for fundamental investors like us. So I think it's something to keep in mind.
Well, before we let you go here, Yan Taw, overall, which sectors are emerging as new thematic battlegrounds in 2025?
A lot. I mean, and it's shifting quite quickly and frequently. I think AI will remain, or generative AI, what's next, whether it's AI agents or, as I mentioned, like smart glasses, these are potentially, new battlegrounds of debates. What's next within generative AI? Are the spendings in AI infrastructure translating into strong earnings growth? In other areas, such as decarbonization, there are some near to medium term kind of, slowdown because of policy changes. But if we look at the longer term angles, 5, 10 years from now, we're going to see a lot more structural shifts there. But near terms are going to be a bit more challenging. But, that's where, a lot of debates will come. And if we look at geopolitics, that's also increasingly playing a lot of debates, a lot of new spending into defense areas, such as technologies involved in these areas. So a lot of these debates are taking place. And I think we look across even areas like space. Right, there are a lot of new space economy that's emerging because of AI, defense, and so on. So these are increasingly some of the new battlegrounds in terms of themes. Hopefully, that's an idea.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Yan Taw, for your time and your insights today.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Yan Taw Boon, who's the head of Thematics at Neuberger Berman. This has been the Wealth Tracker with me, Hongbin Jeong.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.